Hi, everybody. Tonight, it's the origin story, the hero's journey that you've never heard before. We all know about the incredible work Dr. Maggie Yu does to help others, but before she could help anyone, she had to first heal herself. Boy, was it a journey. Tonight, we're going to take you on it. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on Autoimmune Table Talk Live. I'm your co-host, Anne Emanuel, and usually I'll be joined by Dr. Maggie Yu hosting with me, but tonight we want to have a special segment for you. We're going to flip the script, and I will actually be interviewing Dr. Maggie Yu herself. We want to talk about her incredible story, her journey through the years, pinpointing the autoimmune signs in her own life that were missed by so many people. Everyone missed these signs until she finally had to figure it out herself. And we're going to talk about the circumstances in her own life that led her to transform herself so that she can then transform the lives of thousands of others. Maybe you watching, maybe you are one of those people. If so, we definitely want to hear from you. If you think you know everything about Dr. Maggie, think again. We're going to get into a very interesting conversation tonight. So without further ado, let's bring her on in. You know her, you love her. Dr. Maggie Yu, functional and holistic medicine physician, the creator and founder of Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally. Thanks for doing this tonight.
Hey, Anne, thank you for being the co-host here. Love it. I hope everybody in the audience is appreciating and loving this new format with Anne as our host, Anne as our co-host here.
No.
If you guys,
it's exciting because it gives us the opportunity to really have a conversation and to talk about your life. And I think that that's going to be really interesting for everyone tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, it's, you guys know I've been doing Autoimmune Table Talk Live forever. And to be able to have a conversation back and forth and to have you ask me the questions, I'm actually looking forward to this. There are some things that are difficult for me to talk about. I am going to be sharing a lot of details and some intimate details. There are probably things even my own family doesn't know about that I'm going to be talking about. So for our audience here, just so you know, if you haven't joined our Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally, make sure you click the link above or below this video to join the Facebook group. And if you're an alumni watching, I'd love for you to comment in the comment section below what autoimmune struggles that you've had and that you've conquered. And I would love for anybody in the audience, tell me more about your autoimmunity. I'm sharing my story. Give me something. Come on, throw a bone at me. I would love that. If you comment in the comment section below, that'd be awesome.
We definitely want to hear from you. We're seeing people saying hello from where they're watching already. So please continue to comment and let us know what you're thinking. And maybe you can relate to some of what Dr. Maggie is talking about, because her struggle, unfortunately, is not unique.
That is correct. And that's the interesting thing, Anne, is so much of, we're on the phone with at least 200 people a month who are interested in learning more about the Transform protocol or to join the Transform program. But we hear a story over and over again that repeats itself, which is people say, I feel incredibly alone. And I have something super special and rare that nobody else has. And I have symptoms all over the place that nobody can put together. And I'm going nowhere with my doctors, specialists, or natural doctors. This is what I hear over and over again. And that is exactly what my journey has been.
It's a frustrating and it's a lonely place for many people. So let's dive right into it if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's just start from the very beginning. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you were born abroad.
Yeah. I was originally born in Hong Kong, 1969. Yes, I'm a 1960s. And oh, wow. Okay, that's the picture of my mom. On the left over there is me.
And this is a beautiful family, I have to say.
Oh, thank you so much. And my mom was a fashion designer in Hong Kong and really successful one. And I, looked like a happy kid out there, but I stood out like a sore thumb. In fact, I can tell you guys right now that, looking back, there's autoimmune history wise, me and my sister were always constipated. So there were stories, and I still remember sitting on the toilet with our backs to each other, swinging our legs for like an hour to 2 hours every single day trying to poop. And my mom would be like, you guys need to get out of the bathroom. And
this is a little child already that you can even look back and say, oh, that wasn't right. That might have been autoimmune connected.
Yeah, that was absolutely, chronic constipation. And it's not just me and my sister. When I look back at my mom's history, Absolutely. I mean, she had constipation. She, during her pregnancy with me, couldn't gain weight.
Mm.
I wouldn't be surprised during pregnancy she had autoimmune thyroiditis because she lost a ton of weight. She had hair loss. She was really sick and had infections. And my sister's pregnancy, she was on antibiotics the whole time. I mean, some people, her doctor even said my mom was so sick during our pregnancies, and now I look back, those hormonal issues going on,
Mhm.
that she, didn't know if she was going to make it with her second pregnancy. There was a lot of health issues my mom had. So moms of kids with autoimmunity have autoimmunity themselves. So there's a lot in my mom's history that now I look back at and I'm like, voila, she had severe hormonal issues, problems during her pregnancy, and even her family history. There's a strong family history of autoimmune disease that she didn't want to tell me, even when I asked later, because diabetes was really strong in her family, dementia was there. All the women had strokes with cardiovascular disease with high triglycerides. There was a lot going on, even in her own family history. And as a child, for me, one of the most important things in Hong Kong and educational system at that time was it was a pyramid thing where very few people got to high school, very few people got to go to college because there weren't that many. There was only one college at the time, so my educational opportunities were extremely limited. I stood out like a sore thumb. I might have looked cute there, but I can tell you right now, even as a kid, had symptoms of ADD.
Mm.
That is a missed symptom of autoimmunity. I'm just going to tell you this right now. You got the kid who's the class clown. You got the kid who's like, we would have every day, we would have either a bunny stamp or a pig stamp. If we were good, we got the bunny. And we were bad, we got the pig. Three piggy stamps earned a visit with your parents coming in to see the teachers. And my parents knew where the coffee was in the teacher's
Because
office
that's how often it was happening.
because that's how often it was happening. I was very misbehaved as a child with ADD type, ADHD type of behavior. And in Hong Kong, ain't nobody got time for that. That I stood out like a sore thumb. And there was no way, Anne, I would have made it to college. And I can tell you right now that the main reason my dad said that he left Hong Kong with my mom's successful fashion designer career and multiple boutiques all over Hong Kong, the reason they left was because they knew with my ADD, ADHD type symptoms, and how I stood out like a sore thumb and the educational system, I had no chances of ever becoming anything like a physician or even
Mhm.
have a job more than, maybe manual labor, administrative tasks. So, being a kid with those symptoms really stood out like a sore thumb. And my dad said, I had to get you the hell out of there.
And it was obviously the best choice for you. And it's nice to see that your parents did make that sacrifice for you because it certainly worked out in the long run for you and for many others. You mentioned something interesting, though, when you were talking about your mom. You said she didn't want to tell me about these health issues.
Yeah, so it was fascinating. I mean, I'm going to fast forward to how during both my pregnancies, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I had gestational diabetes, which is really high blood sugars, requiring insulin right away. And even my pregnancy endocrinologist, my gynecologist, who was high risk gynecologist, was like, "We've never seen someone immediately, like the day they find out they're pregnant, need insulin. We
Hmm.
don't know what's going on." I certainly didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know it was autoimmune. And none of those doctors knew diabetes was even autoimmune at that time. Even now, your doctors don't know that diabetes, even gestational diabetes, is autoimmune, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if my mom had it during our pregnancies, and that's why she was so sick. That's my mom with my first child. And I didn't want to show up in pictures even during my first child because I had severe problems with postpartum issues with the birth of my son. But when I questioned my mom during my pregnancy with him, and I said, "Hey, mom, is there any diabetes in the family? My doctors don't understand what's going on." She goes, "No."
Hmm.
And it wasn't until like 20 years, no, 10 years later when her brother died from kidney transplant complications that I said, "Wait a minute, does he have diabetes?" And she's
There's
like,
something
"Well, of
wrong.
course he does." And
Yeah.
she says, and I go, "Why didn't you tell me?" She's like, "Well, I don't want another thing for you to blame me for."
Wow. And listen, you're not alone. Someone, look at this comment from Wendy saying, interesting as a fellow Asian. I think it's a cultural thing to ignore hide medical issues, even from your own children and family.
Well, yeah, my mom was certainly high judgment. She raised me very harshly, very high judgment, wonderful woman. But from her own background, she's like, I don't want to be blamed for your health issues. So it
Mhm.
wasn't talked about. And so something as important as he had such severe diabetes that he died from kidney failure and a kidney transplant with it was not not discussed in our family.
And you realize now the importance of this, and I'm sure you talk to all of the people going through the program as well. Hey, you have an opportunity now not to only change your health, but to change the health of those who are coming after you.
Really do, and I take that really seriously, because we'll talk more about that as I look at my kids. When I've had kids, my kids are what I teach now about what signs to look for in kids was what I learned from having my own children.
Mm, mm,
And I can go ahead and just before we talk about that, I do want to talk about how during those pregnancies I struggled with diabetes like crazy, and I had postpartum with my son. I had severe postpartum depression. I had hair loss. I had fibromyalgia with pain. I
mm.
had infection with breast infection like crazy, and I had to be put on antibiotics, which ended up being the next 18 months an infection we call C. diff infection from the use of antibiotics.
Right.
We now know more and more that C. diff infection is one of the triggers of autoimmune disease. And salmonella, some of these other gut infections, is a trigger of autoimmunity. Back then, I just thought breast infection,
Mhm.
antibiotics, now 18 months of another infection. And it was miserable,
Mm.
trying to deal with us. And this is adding to the fact that women with autoimmunity have kids with high needs and special needs and autism spectrum disorder. No
Yep.
clue of that as a doctor. And I thought I helped I delivered hundreds of babies by this time. I help women breastfeed. I actually see their kids, all this stuff, right? And I thought I got this. I got nothing
You
until
had
you
no idea what was coming your way. Well, it was a very hormonally sensitive time in your
right.
life. A lot was changing from a hormonal standpoint. And I know you talk about that all the time. That
Yeah.
is a period where there's a shift and autoimmunity can really kick into high gear. In fact, somebody was just saying that she was diagnosed with gestational diabetes and during her pregnancy had other issues. Was it autoimmune related? Because it was right after that
Yes.
all of the struggles kicked off.
Right. And it wasn't until later on where I really, later on where I was diagnosed, all this other shitstorm where I look back and I'm like, wow, gestational diabetes is a huge warning sign that there is an autoimmune gene in this family. Diabetes is an autoimmune disease, whether it's gestational or not. Right.
Newsflash for a lot of people and a lot of doctors. Diabetes is autoimmune.
Hello, newsflash, right? And diabetics also will have many diabetics, like anyone with autoimmune disease, will get more and more and more autoimmune diagnosis unless you actually stop the autoimmunity. And newsflash, just because you take insulin or you take a medication to lower your blood sugar doesn't mean you calm the autoimmune attack at all. And in
Mhm.
fact, I was a sitting duck of more and more new autoimmune symptoms and diagnosis as life went on.
Okay. And that's typical, right? I mean, you're going to start to accumulate them because, again, you're not cutting off the root cause.
Correct. And who knew what the root cause was back then? I recall, and being a teenager, and when I was a teenager, I had a lot of hormonal issues. I mean,
Mm.
I had acne, I had heavy periods, and I started with new onset worsening ADD symptoms. But the worst of it was the anxiety and depression. Depression really reared its ugly head when I was a teenager. My poor mom, my poor dad, my mom was always like, why are your drapes always black in your room? Why is your door always closed? Like,
Right.
and my mom was just like, being first generation immigrant parents, they were like, what are we going to do with this kid who seems like she has mental health problems?
Mhm.
And so they owned a coffee shop in the bottom of a medical building in Beverly Hills where my mom waitressed and my sister and I waitressed on Saturday, or I delivered food on the weekends or in the summertime. But I was lucky to grow up with a lot of doctors, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, and all the retail workers from Rodeo Drive too. But it was not fancy at all. But it was an incredible way to grow up because my mom started having me talk to some of these people who became mentors and friends in my life. Was a wonderful psychiatrist, Dr. Paul, became a really good personal friend. My mom said, "Please go talk to Dr. Paul, please." And he became one of my best friends and one of my mentors and somebody who really encouraged me to go into medicine later on in life. But it was because my mom and dad were so exasperated at dealing with a first generation Chinese kid who's supposed to conform with everywhere else that stood out like a sore thumb, who's dealing with anxiety, depression, right? And
Mhm.
ADD and ADHD. And they didn't even know what that was back then.
And then, of course, you had the hormonal symptoms from way back. These are all signs that were missed. And looking back now, you realize, okay, that was autoimmune brewing.
Well, and I'm going to tell people right now what we teach in the program is how to test your own hormones and your children's. And you will not believe how many people do not understand to this day that so many of the hormonal problems that our teenage girls have, um, such as PCOS, heavy periods,
Mhm.
PMS, migraines, hormonal migraines, a lot of these you will find these severe hormonal changes in certain individuals could be a marker for signs of autoimmunity starting to brew up. People with autoimmune disease have kids with autoimmune disease predisposition, and those kids have more hormonal shifts than the general population. So they have more hormonal symptoms. So that's the common thread I saw in my mother, in myself, and then in my own children. And that is why I teach what I teach right now about these hormonally sensitive times and signs you absolutely don't want to miss.
Because let's talk about what happened to you when you were pregnant and after you gave birth.
Yeah. Um, there's my son, right? And at the
So sweet.
right, he looks normal, and I really wanna talk about how I look normal, right? But autoimmune
Absolutely.
disease is an invisible illness. Do you look at those pictures and think, "Oh my god, there's an autoimmune shitstorm right there, every single person in that photo," because that's the
We look
truth.
and say, these people look like they're having a wonderful, happy life.
No. So my son, after he received his, I'm careful with this word because he'll get censored out of Facebook. Let's just say after he received his 1-year-old hashtag V's,
Mhm.
um, was a completely normal, healthy child in some way, in many ways, suddenly had really strong thrusts, angry, pushing away, would not sleep, scream bloody murder. All the signs of autism spectrum disorder really started to come in right after his first year hashtag V's.
Got it.
Um, and that was shocking to me. And I was already struggling with my own issue. I was telling you there that I was dealing with a C. diff infection, which meant every time, I mean, not to get gruesome about this, but you guys with autoimmune disease know this. Every time thought I was passing gas, if you have a C. diff infection, you're passing mucus.
Hmm.
And that is terrible.
Not a
I'm
way
a
to
working
live.
doctor. I'm a young doctor working, and I'm breast trying to pump milk for this child who has the spectrum disorder symptoms, and I'm dealing with C. diff infection, gut issues, planning my life around bathrooms while trying to be my first second year of being a working doctor at Kaiser in Los Angeles. And that is a nightmare. And he really started to develop more and more autism spectrum. And later on, he was diagnosed with Asperger's. And I thought I was the only one. I thought I did something wrong as a mother. I thought it was my fault. And
Mm,
I also thought as a physician, what the hell was wrong with me that I couldn't do all this stuff that I was teaching my patients and helping them how to do? What the hell was wrong with me?
right. Why can't I fix what's going on in my life?
But it's autoimmune related. All these issues were autoimmune related.
Well, and at least you've been able to now help others because look at this person saying, alumni here. I've learned so much in this program that it's not only helped me, but allowed me to troubleshoot my own daughter's health issues. Truly invaluable info that I'll have for life. I mean, that's the whole goal here. I know that this is what you want. You want
Yeah.
to set people up for life to think like you, to after those 2 months be able to say, okay, what do we need to do? We need to order these labs. I know how to read these labs. And guess what? I also know how to help other people in my life that I love.
That's the whole point. I was just did an interview earlier this week, and you saw that where I was interviewing an alumni, and she was talking about the remarkable change that her husband noticed in her, but also she was already noticing that she was able to influence her husband's health, her daughter's health, and her granddaughters. And I said, okay. So a lot of people find that it's hard to help themselves and say yes to themselves. But let me
Mhm.
ask you, if nothing else, to see the change your husband, your daughter, and your granddaughter experience as a result of your health improving, would that have been worth it? You remember what she said.
Right.
Yes, yes, and hell yes, a million
A
times.
hundred times over, a million times over, right? If
She
you can't
said,
do it for you, you'll do it for the ones that you love.
and she said, my only regret was I didn't find this program 20 years earlier to save my husband who passed away from MS.
Right. And you were talking about ironic 20 years ago, though you were going through the same thing and
I
maybe
said that.
you were trying to figure it out at that same time. So I'm curious, what went into that then? Your life sounds like it was starting to kind of fall apart in some ways. You know, you were having these health issues yourself. You were dealing with a child with potential health issues. And I want to hear about what was happening with you at work at the time.
So after my second daughter was my second child, my daughter was born right there. I know I look good, right? You look at it and you're like,
Amazing,
oh,
right?
no, this is probably some of the sickest time in my life,
Mm.
because over that period of time, in a 6-month period, I had lost about 20 pounds. I was anxious. I was in a lot of pain. I was having severe right shoulder pain that was interfering with my work. I was having also fibromyalgia, hand and wrist and joint pain.
Mhm.
Marriage was falling apart. I was the sole breadwinner responsible for making money for supporting my family. We were in the middle of marital counseling where everything was being blamed on you're depressed, you're
Mm.
anxious, you need to get an antidepressant, you need to work harder, you need therapy. What's wrong with you? And I was on antidepressants. I was on birth control pills because my periods were going nuts. So this was literally probably 6 months to a year before I hit early menopause at the age of 36.
Well, and you were in a very unsupportive environment, which did not help.
Yeah, and, I don't wanna get sued by anyone, but let's just say, yes, that's to put it lightly, yes, I was in a very unsupportive environment, but as a working physician, I was a family physician in one of the largest groups, working in Oregon. I was the medical director of that clinic. I was seeing about 20 to 30 patients every single day, sole breadwinner in my house, and I could not do my job. I felt like I was losing my mind. It wasn't
Mm.
just my body. I felt like I was freaking losing my mind because the brain fog was starting to hit. The anxiety was getting worse and worse. And at home, and even in marital therapy, it was blamed on now you have severe anxiety and now you have depression. You need to take more and more meds to deal with this. And it wasn't helping me. It was very frustrating because my mental health and my faith and confidence in myself really took a dive. And I made some mistakes at work and poor decisions at work, and I was fired.
Right.
I was fired.
What did that feel like for you?
You know, when you put your entire identity in being the doctor, being
Mhm.
the smart one, being the one that has answers for everybody else, being workhorse. My nickname for myself back then was workhorse.
Mm.
And I thought if I worked harder, I could solve any problem. And the problem was that the confluence of what was happening in my physical health with my emotional health, with the marriage and relationship I was in at home, and some health issues with my children, it was complete crash, hit rock bottom. And I even hit rock bottom financially because I was fired. Um, and I had to really figure out what I was going to do. And I had no choice at that time but to start and open my own medical clinic. For financial reasons, I was like, they made it very hard because certain clinics would say, I don't want you to compete with us. We're going to make life hard for you to find a job anywhere else. So I
Mm.
was forced to open up my own clinic, which initially started out as a family medicine clinic. But
Mhm.
mind you, I was going through early menopause, hormonal hell, and I was literally dying at that time. So out of sheer raw, like survival, I have to survive. I have to make money. I have to feed my kids. I'm getting a divorce right now. Like all this, I had to figure out what do I do with this stuff hormonally. I saw doctors, gynecologists. One of my closest friends was a gynecologist, and I was like, "What the heck? Do I not have periods anymore?" All this stuff, and he's just like, "Maggie, you're just going through menopause. You're just getting older." I'm like, "I'm 36. How can I be going through menopause? That's
Right.
not normal." And he's like, "You're just getting older."
And this is a well-respected physician
Mhm.
who meant well, and
He's a
that's the
friend
kind
of
of,
mine.
yeah, these are the kind of doctors that people still are running into today because they just aren't trained in this. They don't have the answers.
He didn't even test my hormones. I had to beg, and and I could not get my colleagues to order hormones on me because you're not menstruating, your hormones are low, we don't need to test it. Or,
Mm.
oh, you're still menstruating, we don't need to check your hormones, they're fine. Those are the answers that I was getting while I was going through all this. And then when I finally didn't have a period for like 6 months, I had to freaking test my own hormones and didn't know what the hell to do with those results. And lucky for me, what I did was I had a wonderful patient, Jerry is her name, and she brought in a book about bioidentical hormones and how
Mm.
to understand hormones and hormone testing. And I read it and I was like, wow, I've never been taught this in medical school. And it was talking about how to compound hormones, what natural supplements were. And I was like, this is the first time I didn't even know what to do. So I called a local compounding pharmacy, and Denise, who was the local compounding pharmacist, took me under her wing as Biddy and just said, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to understand those results. I'll teach you how to compound hormones so that you could essentially treat yourself. And that was the beginning of the first step in not just sharing that knowledge with my patients, but that was the first step in saving my own life, was hormones, knowing how to test my own hormones, having a mentor, being able to ask those questions of. And at the time, for a short time, I did take bioidentical hormones because I didn't know what was underneath it was autoimmunity.
Right.
So if you can't stop the autoimmune attack and you have no hormones, you're going to take hormones, and that's going to be your only solution.
And you're not alone hearing some of those comments from doctors. Merritt said she's heard, you're just getting older. That's all it is. And she says,
36,
no.
man. Come on. I was 36, not 86. And that's what I said to my friend gynecologist. I said, dude, I'm 36. I'm not 86, man.
Right. Yeah, there has to be something else going on brewing underneath the surface. So as you mentioned, this was really the beginning of you investing your time, your money, all of your efforts into researching this and learning about it and figuring it out. I'm curious exactly how much time, money, and effort was put into this.
I mean, I'm 52 right now, and I started this journey to learn about this at 36, right? And none of this is paid. Most doctors' training, by the way, is paid for by pharmaceutical companies. No pharmaceutical companies is going to make money off of me learning how to look at my hormones, test my hormones, and fix my body naturally or with supplements. Who the heck's going to pay for that? So when you look at it over the last, wow, what's 52 minus 36? I don't know.
Yeah, I went to journalism school, Dr. Maggie. You know, I can't do that.
So over the last 15 years, when I add up how much time, energy, money I've spent over $1 million investing in my own education, and also running through all these different types of testing that we now offer in our program. I had to put money into that and time. That was my own time to be able to do that, to save my own life. And the resources were so limited. By the way, I wasn't even diagnosed with having Hashimoto's. I didn't even know I had an autoimmune disease at this time. But there was a really critical book that came out by Tatis Karazian that said, oh, I feel terrible. Why are my hormones? The title, something really long ass title that was like, I feel terrible, but why are my thyroid labs normal? Right.
Okay. And that another light bulb moment for you.
That was huge light bulb, because I was another one of those that had been begging for TSH and being told that my thyroid was normal while I was sitting here losing hair, gaining weight, getting more depressed, and having constipation. Right. And I went and I took on training. I went and I, learned from Dr. Karazian. I actually was like so compelled by the book and the research behind that book. I went and I learned from him. And it blew me away, just the scientific connections that he was making between hormones, thyroid, gut, brain, supplementation. It was a complete whole new world. And just so you guys know, functional medicine for MDs did not exist at that time.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the state of it like then? Non-existent?
Non-existent. MDs had no way to learn anything natural. Nothing. And I'm serious when I tell you, in all of my medical school and residency, we're talking like 8 years total, right? Out of that 8 years, how long do you guys think I spent learning about alternative medicine or nutrition?
Right.
30 minutes. 30 minutes during my medical school at UCLA. That was it. And so, and yet here I am, a successful family medicine doctor, medical director of this giant clinic for the largest medical group here in Oregon. And patients would come up to me and with symptoms I had myself. We would roll our eyes. All of us doctors would roll our eyes when we had the woman in her 40s who came in and said she was tired. We all rolled our eyes because you know what? We knew her labs was going to come back normal and there ain't nothing we were going to do about it. And it was every single day. Well, now until I became her.
And this is what Julie says. What about the doctor saying you're fine when you have a long list of symptoms?
Oh my God, that was my worst nightmare as a primary care doctor. When they would come in, I already knew. I'd be like, your top, my medical system would be like, can you just tell her your top 3 symptoms? Because I had to get in and out of there in 7 minutes because I had 30 people to see that day. And so that's your worst nightmare patient who comes in with all these symptoms
Right.
and you want to get them out as quickly as possible. What I did was like, great, I'm going to order these labs for you, which I knew were going to come back normal.
Mhm.
And then they would still come back over and over again with these complaints. I'd be like, okay, you could go see a neurologist, the psychiatrist, and you can see the gynecologist. Bye, next patient. This
Mhm.
was survival as a primary care doctor until I became her.
Right. And you had to live through it. But a lot that's still what's happening today for people who are visiting their PCP and
Right.
telling them about their issues. And then they're getting sent all over to different specialists who can just tell them a little bit about this or a little bit about that, but can't connect any of it. And certainly, I would guess, aren't connecting it to an autoimmune issue.
Well, you asked me where was the state of functional medicine and training for functional medicine. This is 16 years ago, and I would say it didn't exist, right? I literally had to like on the down low look for naturopathic conferences. When I had my own clinic that I started, I hired naturopaths to work with me because I was the medical doctor. We had nurse practitioners, physician's assistant that all did primary care, but I was learning more and more about autoimmunity and hormones. I was starting to be really well known in the Portland area as a hormone specialist. And as I was treating these women with hormone issues, what I found was there was a large population of these women and men that weren't improving by me just giving them hormones.
Hmm,
They kept fluctuating, they kept getting more and more symptoms, and I was like, "What is going on?"
something else.
And lucky for me, I started really hiring a lot of people wanted these services, and I couldn't be the only doctor providing it. I hired half the clinic full of naturopathic physicians, and I had a naturopathic medical director, Carrie Jones, who's wonderful as she is a hormone expert. She taught me so much about hormones, adrenals, testing that was completely new to me as an MD because we have no ability to learn it back then. And even now, when you look at the current state of functional medicine and how we treat autoimmunity, it's
What's it
still a
like?
shit show. It is still currently a shit show. We could go into more of that later. But back then, it didn't even exist. I had to learn it by literally hiding in these naturopathic conferences.
Clandestine.
Well, and I had to hire, 4 naturopaths in my clinic, 4 medical providers, and every week we taught each other. Every week we met to go over cases and taught each other. That was my foray between Dr. Karazian, learning from him and his conferences, going to having naturopaths in my own clinic, really spending money and time doing various different types of tests on the patients in our clinic and on myself was how I learned on the job. And thank God I did because there was no other way I could have learned. I did not have access to learning how to be a functional medicine doctor or how to save my own freaking life.
Yeah, you were pioneering it. And so many people can relate to what you're saying about that frustration of going to the doctor and not getting answers or being told, like this
Yeah.
person says, that we have anxiety. I can relate to that. I had somebody tell me once, a doctor tell me I was just a hysterical woman. And that my issues just were in my head because I looked fine and my blood work was fine. So I must be just needing to see a therapist, which is what Lisa said too. I was
Yeah.
told to make a gratitude list and also see a therapist.
And that, what does that do to your self-trust, right?
Exactly.
I was already broken and my self-trust was eroded. I had to open a medical clinic. And as I was open, I had to do so much, but it was at a point where I had the lowest level of self-trust in myself. I lost it. I mean, here I am, a doctor who can't even solve my own medical issues or put it together and had to go in the down low and had to put half of my salary into learning more just in order to be able to save my own freaking life. I completely lost myself and my self-trust even at that time. And even as the clinic was becoming more and more well-known, became the biggest integrative clinic in Oregon at that time. And as I was, as one of my naturopaths suggested I do a test for Hashimoto's because my hormones were going nuts. So I
Hmm.
tested positive.
Okay,
And
so
then I
you were
started
not everybody
testing.
gets that positive test, even as you can to tell them, but you did test positive.
Well, and then, yeah. And then I started thinking about all these women I couldn't help, even though I was trying to balance their hormones and they still had all these fluctuating hormones and symptoms and new diagnosis. I was like, maybe I should start testing all these people and start thinking about them as could they have autoimmune disease? Guess
Mhm.
what?
Yes.
That
Why?
was
Yes.
the biggest aha and holy grail was so many of these people that had mounting health symptoms, the 40-year-old with the 630 list of complaints and symptoms. Every one of these people had autoimmune disease.
Hmm. So that was the shift for you, it sounds like professionally, where you really started to get the information, to understand it better, and then to be able to help your patients in a much better, more
Yeah.
well-rounded way, treating it as if it's autoimmune, so that then you could, at that point, did you know you needed to discover what the cause was?
Well, in order to help them, yes,
Yep.
right? I couldn't so the state of current hormone doctors is ridiculous. I'm not even I mean, that's probably another autoimmune table talk live. What I'm gonna say is this is that just giving someone hormones doesn't mean you understand jack shit about how to balance their hormones, which is what's necessary to stop and turn around their autoimmunity.
It's
Big
about
light bulb right there. You know?
yep.
So there was yeah, many people you give hormones and they feel better, but majority did not. And then some people, as you give them hormones, even get worse. And guess what's going on? They had underlying autoimmune attack that was still going up and down, causing
Mhm.
tremendous hormonal havoc, which was causing autoimmune new diagnoses, new symptoms to come out more and more and more. And why is it the average was the 40-year-old with 30 lists of complaints that we all yawned at and rolled our eyes at? Because
Right.
that's when her hormones was changing the most. But I also saw her when she had after her first pregnancy, after her second pregnancy, I saw her daughter with all her monthly hormonal symptoms and IBS symptoms. It was really starting to click in where I'm like, all of these people and men, even in their 30s or 40s, suddenly severe depression, insomnia. And I realized as I started doing autoimmune testing and seeing them through an autoimmune lens, this was the only way I could save their lives. And this
Mhm.
was the only way I could save my life is I had to look through not just a hormone balancing lens, but an autoimmune lens at all their myriad of symptoms that were tied.
Mhm. And I'm just thinking about now all the hats that you've worn. You know, we talked about your childhood and you being a daughter, you being a mother, you being then a physician yourself, then you being a sick person, and now maybe this is a title you also love. You're a teacher.
Yeah. When I think about that, as as a child, as a daughter, as a mother, as a physician, as a wife, and as a teacher now, every single role that I've ever played has been completely touched by autoimmunity and affected by it, impacted by it. And one would say negatively impacted in many ways.
Mhm. It's
But I
shaped you though.
absolutely. I call it sharpening my blade. When
Mhm.
I look now, it sounds crazy, but thank God that happened to me.
Right.
I mean, that sounds crazy, I know, but if that didn't happen to me, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be alive. First of all, I
That's
would
number
not
one.
be alive. I want to be really clear about that because not only would autoimmune disease cause that to happen, but I can tell you right now also is that the mental health toll that had the severe anxiety, the early menopause, I was hospitalized for a mental health breakdown.
Can you, I know that that's probably difficult to talk about, but the role of stress and trauma and its
Mhm.
impact on autoimmune disease is something that people can often take for granted, but it is so real. And might you share some details about that stress and trauma in your life?
Yeah, I would say that interestingly, many of us are victims of violence, either in our childhood, spousal, or relational. And suffice it to say, I want to be vague about this, is that I lived through over a decade of physical abuse. And the threat of that every day, um, I applaud all the men and women out there who are victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, because all of that happened to me. And it absolutely fed my autoimmune disease, eroded my self-trust, and impacted me as a mother, as a woman, as a daughter, and as a doctor, and now as a teacher, because I understand just how much of an impact that has on us.
Mm.
Whew, and
I'm so
from a
sorry. So I know it's hurting everyone's heart right now to hear you talk about this because everybody cares so deeply for you. But it's your truth. It's what you lived through. And it sounds like we don't even know the full extent of the mental toll it took on you.
That is absolutely correct. And, and to be honest, there were points I did not want to live.
Mm.
And I didn't even go on to all the physical pain and other symptoms I went through after multiple car accidents, chronic pain. I went through 18 months of almost near disability. I had to hire another doctor to work in the room with me because I was disabled. That's depressing. And I went through a severe mental health crisis where I even attempted to take my own life. And I think that's really important to share.
Yeah, I don't know that you've talked about this before, Dr. Maggie. And like you said, it's difficult to talk about, but it's important because this is part of the buildup of all of these issues. And you're not the only one who was feeling that way and went through something similar to that. And I'm so sorry to hear that. But like you said, it's important to share your truth.
I do, and I think that the mental health and stresses and abuse that I lived through and and even my self-harm, when I go back and look at that, I think it really roots into why we have mindset work in our program.
Mhm.
This ain't just a medical program, people. I really want you guys to understand this. My heart, soul, and passion and every single lesson that I paid for is in this program. It is my life's work. And I think that one of the mindset pieces that's really important and a string that pulls through my entire story, I can tell you, one of the biggest dominant emotion that is in people with autoimmune disease that feeds the autoimmunity is called lack of forgiveness.
Mm.
I had problems not just forgiving other people, but I had the biggest problem not forgiving myself.
That sense of self-worth.
And think about what autoimmune disease is, Anne, which is that autoimmune disease is where your own immune system, instead of trying to kill germs, is trying to kill you. That's the ultimate act of self annihilation that your body can do. And I'm telling everyone here that's from a lack of self forgiveness.
Right, it's
And
the brain connection too. I mean, your body knows that. It knows your feelings and your thoughts.
when you cannot forgive yourself for being sick, for not being the provider, for not being perfect, for not having all the answers, whatever it is, for losing your self trust, you mentally will be self annihilating with and even self harm. And physically, your body helps you out with that, doing the exact same thing. Your body will try to kill itself. And that's what autoimmune disease is. There is an autoimmune emotional avatar, and it's someone who cannot forgive themselves.
I just want you to know you're getting so much love from people right now in the live comments. This person says hugs. You're getting hearts. Yes, hugs for her and everyone impacted by trauma. People are really thanking you for the transparency that you provide and just showing that you've been through all of this and it all led up to you doing what you do every day. I mean, there's a reason for it and it's a deeper reason. It's not just a business to you. Betsy here says, Dr. Yu, thank you for being transparent. The impact of violence. I grew up in a violent alcoholic home and can identify with not wanting to live. Betsy, I'm so sorry to hear that as well for you. But what you're saying, your story, unfortunately, is not isolated.
And I also think that people look at people on the outside, and autoimmunity it's a silent, invisible illness.
Yes.
How many people out there looking at me or have looked at me don't understand just how much of a toll, just the surface of what I told you, it has been on my life.
Absolutely.
And look at those pictures. You don't see the pain, the suffering, the price that
No.
I had to pay and my family has to pay for living with autoimmunity that didn't have a solution at that time. I have earned every single piece of everything that I'm teaching here on these lives and in the program. I have earned with blood, sweat, tears, and financial investment and time to be able to do that. And actually grateful I had that opportunity, Anne,
Right.
because even my own mom's death.
Well, we didn't talk about that, but I know it's another really challenging topic for you, but this was a major driving force that led you to want to make a difference in the lives of others because I know you've shared here and there just a little bit about your mom, but if you might get into the illness that she battled and what happened.
My mom, when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I begged my mom to be tested because I started to understand the genetics of this. And she tested positive for Hashimoto's.
Mhm.
And I started to share what I had learned with her. This is before the program. This is the bits and pieces I was learning. And she said, "No, I don't feel bad, Maggie. It's too hard to go gluten-free. It's too hard to look at diet. It's too hard to actually deal with my hormones and all that." And I said, "Mom, it's too hard and it's but you know what's harder? Getting a diagnosis or some sort of something terminal later that you can't reverse."
Mm.
It's like I tell this people with autoimmunity all the time. I had a whole video I did about the autoimmune timeline, and
Mhm.
I lived the autoimmune timeline. My mom lived the autoimmune timeline, and that's why I did the teaching about the autoimmune timeline. Autoimmune disease doesn't stop just because you want to be an ostrich.
Right.
Okay.
Hide your head.
Listen to me, everybody. Autoimmune disease doesn't stop just because you want to play ostrich. And there's a price that you have to pay and your children and your family have to pay for you ostriching. So
Ignoring it.
yeah, so I said to my mom, I really pushed her to do everything that she could for autoimmunity that I was learning about. And she said, "I don't feel bad." And I go, "You don't feel bad until you feel bad, mom."
Mhm.
And it took about 4 or 5 years later, she was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease,
A devastating illness.
at the age of 62. And to be the one to have to tell my mom that. And now we're learning more and more that ALS is actually, there are roots in autoimmunity there.
Mhm.
And I eat myself freaking alive for the fact that could I have prevented this in my mom had I
Push
pushed
hard.
harder, pull her head out of the ostrich sand earlier, bitch slapped her? What could I have done different to have saved her life? And that's why I do what I do. Like, I'm sitting here, like, doing these lives every Thursday because I freaking want people to get their head out of the sand and realize autoimmune disease does not stop just because you have excuses, you have low self worth, or you want to play ostrich here.
It's
And
gonna
you
keep
know what?
you
You
in your
don't feel
body.
bad until you do.
It's so, so tragic that you had to experience another aspect of that in losing your mom. Can't imagine what that feels like. Do you think about her every day, I imagine, as you're trying to help others?
I'm the luckiest woman in the world to have had her as my mother because she took one for the team from me. I think about this. Seeing what happened with my mom really made me want to make sure it doesn't happen to me and that I don't have that impact on my children. I would
Mhm.
never want my daughter to blame herself for me dying young because I didn't take care of it on myself or I didn't take that initiative, right? So that's why I think it's always an interesting question that I'll ask in interviews. And I'll ask people like, if nothing else, the impact this has had on your children, would it have been worth it? I
Mhm.
can tell you universally, I've done over 200 interviews here over the last 4 years of alumni through our program. Universally, every single person said it would have been worth it just to have seen that impact in their child. And so for me, I never want another daughter to live through what I lived through with my mom, to feel that responsibility, that helplessness, and to watch your mother suffer through one of the worst ways a person could possibly die.
Listen, people are really relating to you. This person says, "Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Maggie. Everything you're saying, hitting close to home, and listening to you, giving them hope really is." And they're saying, "Thank you for being brave and telling your story." And also the fact that you've lived through this, it's giving them a reason to just have that extra trust in you. They know that you're doing this for the right reasons because you want to help people, and that's your driving force. And it took you going through it and living it yourself to get to this point. And I know you shared this with your dad as well, right? That this is why you're doing it.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting video with my dad where I'm walking with my dad and we're talking. I was trying to tell him that I do what I do now because of mom, right? it's to honor actually my mom's memory, is that I don't want that to happen to another woman. I don't want that to happen to another daughter. I don't want this to happen to another family. And it really is a driving force. And I feel blessed that my mom took one for the team that's the price we had to pay as a family for me to learn this lesson. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And which is why I sound like a raving lunatic sometimes on these lives. I'm waving my hands and I'm sitting here like, don't you dare play ostrich. And I'm sitting here like cussing up a storm, this or that, because I feel that passionately about this, because this is a solvable problem.
It's that important.
It is a solvable problem. This is the thing.
But most doctors won't tell you that. They'll say this is something you have to live with for the rest of your life. Oh, and by the way, it's probably going to be progressive. And oh, and by the way, it's going to keep getting worse and worse, and you might get more issues. But you're saying it's solvable. Most people are not telling you it's solvable. In fact, no one is telling you it's solvable.
It's flipping bullshit what they're telling their patients, but not because they don't care, but because they're literally uneducated. And that makes me mad, because we as the patient has to pay the price for their ignorance, but yet they're doing the best that they can and they care. I'm not here to bag on those colleagues, because I was that doctor. Right. And I was a damn good family medicine doctor before I became a functional medicine doctor. But that's what I told people too, because that's what I was trained to do until I became that person. But now that I know what I know, I mean, for God's sake, the 5 pillars, people. Okay. The 5 pillars isn't just some 5 pillars thing. Think of every pillar in there as the blood, sweat, and tears. There's something in my story that fed each of the pillars. We could do an interview even with that sometime, where I go through like what part of my life really fed the hormone pillar, the food napkin pillar.
The lessons learned that are now an integral part of the program to help others.
It ain't just about blood sugar, guys. The blood sugar thing damn near killed me. Okay. There are lessons there. I mean, digestion. Why is it such a big issue in this program? I can even tell you the impact. I mean, every single one, if you haven't watched the 5 pillars and really understand these lessons that I'm teaching of how to solve autoimmunity,
it's time.
Write 5 pillars in comments right now. Check your message requests in a couple hours. Our team will send you some resources. Tell me what autoimmune struggles you have. Get some help, for goodness sakes, right? This is does not have to be a silent illness. Doesn't have to be invisible. You don't have to pretend that you don't have this problem, because there are absolutely 100% solutions out there. I have dedicated the last 16 years of my life to turning around, solving autoimmunity, and teaching it. I am not a one-on-one doctor in a clinic anymore. You know why? I don't want to just impact one person. I want to impact thousands and thousands of people and their families. That's why I do what I do now.
And you're having a much greater reach that way. And people are very thankful for it. I had a comment up before, basically somebody saying they were in week 7 of the program, and it's so refreshing to be able to work with somebody, here it is, who really understands it. It makes such a difference to work with someone who understands what you're going through. Another person saying it's a life-changing program from an alumni. Somebody saying it's so hard when you know you have to fix something and they don't want to listen. Well, guess what? Dr. Maggie will listen, and you have the answers.
I do have the answers, and I'm 100% certain about that. In a world where you have no certainty, borrow my certainty if you need to. But I know how to turn around this shit. I really do. And it's so interesting. And you've seen me do a couple of these alumni interviews. One of the main reasons people don't want to join, or they're worried about even booking a call or chatting with our team, they're like, I think it could be a scam.
Right.
I'm like,
it can seem too good to be true. For an outsider, something on the internet, you're hearing all of these, she's going to fix me. She can't fix me. She couldn't possibly. But then time and time again, how do you make it up? You can't make up these alumni, what they're having to say.
And then that's why we're doing these interviews. I do 2 interviews of alumni every single week over the last 4 years, guys. And so if it's a scheme or a scam, that's a very elaborate scam.
Pretty good one.
But I'll be honest with you. Don't take my word for it. Anybody that's watching, you don't have to believe a word I say, right? Don't take somebody's word. What I want you to do is take someone's results.
Right.
I'm alive. I'm here. I'm not living every day in the hell, mental and physical hell that I used to be in. I have solved this problem for me. Number 1. Number 2, Look at the results of the hundreds of graduates that are even in this live right now commenting, and look at all the videos of the testimonials and case studies of every autoimmune diagnosis or symptom under the moon. Ain't no diagnosis or symptom that scares me. I'm just telling you right now.
Dr. Maggie, thanks for sharing your story. Your program is the answer for so many. You have found a way to put the puzzle together for us. And that's really, it does feel like that a lot of times. It's a puzzle. It's this underlying what's happening beneath the surface puzzle. And it's going to be different for everybody. Two people may have the same autoimmune disease or maybe the same mystery symptoms, but maybe the approach to how they're going to get well might be different, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And for me, getting a really personalized approach is really important. And people think because there's a transform protocol and there's 5 pillars, they think it's the same answer for every person. And everybody in this program will tell you, hell to the no. This is the most personalized solutions that you're ever going to get, understanding your own data and the why behind your own autoimmunity. So I would challenge everyone here, if you're watching and you want help and you need help, comment in the comment section below. Tell me more about you. But there's also a link we're going to put here for you to start a chat with our team. Start a chat with our team so we can learn more about you, to see if it's something we can help you with. And we certainly have tons of resources that we would love to share with you. So we're going to put a link below, but there's going to be, should be a link above this video as well for you to start a chat with our team. I would love and invite all of you guys, if anything, I would love in chat right now, whether you're watching on YouTube or Instagram, wherever you're watching, if there's one thing about my story that helped you or that you could identify with, can you please give me some feedback on that? Give me some love. I would love to see how, if any way, any part of my story impacted you. That would be very life-giving for me, and I would love that. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, what resonated? Because you've been through a lot. You've had a lot of different aspects of this throughout your life. And I know that it's going to hit home for so many people. Alumni are hearing saying she speaks the truth. And others saying, you know, they're very excited to get help potentially from you now. They're going to chat with the team because doctors just aren't hearing. Maybe they've struggled with this for years, just like you had to, but they don't have to anymore because you figured it out.
Yeah, and I would say that, just I'm curious if the audience would like further discussion, because I think we just grazed on some of the pillars and how they came to be. You guys could, but I would love to talk more about like the hormonally sensitive hormones. Why do we have hormones the way it looks in the program right now? Why do we test hormones? Why do we teach hormones? Food mapping. Why did I create food mapping, and what did it take to create it? You know, like people don't even realize food sensitivities and food mapping is totally two different things. I created food mapping, and it's completely different than anything else you've ever done with doctors in relation to autoimmunity and food. And alumni will tell you guys that. So, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting to just talk about how did I create food mapping? If you guys are interested in learning more about food mapping, type food mapping in chat. That'd be really great. And if there's enough of you guys, I would love to do a deep dive with you, Anne, on how I created that process.
I think it'd be a great topic potentially for next week. Let's see, give us some love in the comments. Let us know if you'd like to hear us dive a little bit deeper into how, you know, we've gone through your journey now, but the lessons that you've learned, how they became this integral part of the program and the pillars when it comes to food mapping, hormonal issues, and the other pillars. Yeah, we're seeing people say yes. So I think,
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the comments. This means the world to me.
This person, I just want to say the difficulties in your life totally resonated with my life. So many of us have dealt with these difficulties that accelerated our autoimmune disease, just like you said. You know, you can't stick your head in the sand. You can't be that ostrich. You have to address it.
Irene is starting the program on Sunday. Congratulations, Irene. I can't wait to meet you in the program.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Maggie, I know we've been talking for almost an hour now, but if we can just have fun for a second. You mentioned food mapping. You're a foodie yourself, right?
Yes.
So I know how important it is for you. You know, sometimes people will come to you having been through other testing and things like that, but your goal is not to make people take out all of these foods. You love food yourself. You want to find the way to just have the very targeted foods that people can enjoy, because that's a part of your life.
Well, Anne, you've actually seen the food mapping process in the mastermind calls that you've attended recently, just to learn more about the program. What we're finding is that most people they've done food testing before and had BS data that was unusable. Now they have usable data. And most of them are finding out that they're reintroducing and adding back a ton more food. I can go into in the future just about how much love of food is how I show my love. That's how my mom showed her love. I learned cooking from my mom. It's also my hobby. I have tons of videos on Foodie MD on how to cook. And I hold true to that. I love food, and it's my mission in life in the program to help people get past their food trauma, get some accurate data, and learn to fall back in food with food and cooking and using food as medicine to heal their body again and enjoying it in the process.
Love it. I definitely look forward to us taking a deeper dive into all of this. What else do you want to share with everybody tonight?
I think that the most important thing I would like to tell people is that the difference between a person who gets better and a person who doesn't is the series of decisions and actions you're going to take or that you don't take. So the person who gets better is the person who's going to make decision after decision to take action after action after action to get better and better and better relentlessly,
Okay.
consistently. So you be that person. You be that person. Make a decision right now by putting a comment in the comment section. Make a decision right now to chat with our team. Make a decision right now to put somebody's name in the video, underneath this video, to share this video with somebody else. Do something. Every single decision and action step you take brings you closer to the solution. And that's the only way you're going to have a solution.
And remind everybody all of the ways to connect with you.
Sure. You can start a chat with our team. Join our Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally. I'm on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Those of you who don't know I'm on TikTok, we'll add a link here to our TikTok channel so you can follow me on TikTok too. You can message us through Instagram. You can message us through our Facebook pages. You can message us through the link above and below this. You can be in our community in the Facebook group. That's how you're going to do it, everybody.
Dr. Maggie, I just want to say thank you so much for being so open, so vulnerable, so transparent tonight. I know that you have definitely inspired a lot of people out there who are dealing with their own issues. And on behalf of the alumni that you've already helped, the people currently in the program, and those in the future who you will help, because I know there will be so
Are you out there?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this and for being a light of hope for so many people who need it as well.
Thanks, Anne, for being a wonderful host. And I'm so glad somebody's able to ask some of these questions, or else I wouldn't have been able to get through this. So thank you, Anne.
Good. I'm so happy I could be here for it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for Autoimmune Table Talk Live. I'm Anne Emanuel with Maggie, you, the one and only. We'll see you back here next time.
Bye, everybody.